Hello, writers. Have you ever bought a writing craft book someone says you just have to read?
Is it still sitting on your shelf? Have you even cracked the spine?
That's totally me.
Don't ask Renee how many craft books she owns.
Why do we keep buying these books we never read?
We all want to improve as writers, but that's hard to do alone.
That's why we started the Words to Write By podcast, to tackle these books together, chapter by chapter, and learn from their advice.
Or not. Sometimes they're wrong.
Hi, I'm Renee Nelson, former college writing instructor turned full-time writer and podcaster. After many years, I finally have a complete draft of my memoir.
And I'm Kim Smuga-Otto, author of the humorous fantasy series, Boy Bands and Dragons. The first book, our comeback tour, Slaying Monsters, will be released this year by Riverfolk Publishing.
And now, on with the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Words to Write By podcast.
Hi, everybody.
And today is one of our workshops. We have a writer by the name of Madix. And before we get started, I wanted to have Madix on for a workshop because I listened to his podcast, the LitRPG podcast, which we'll go into exactly what LitRPG and LitRPG is in a moment. But he does long interviews with authors and they talk about their books, but often they'll stray over to what his books are and stuff he's doing, specifically this major rewrite he did on his book Torchbearer. And then they always stop because he says, this is your podcast, I'm talking to you. But I'm actually kind of curious about this rewrite and what you did. And so I thought I'd have you on and do a workshop with you and basically figure out why you did it, what you learned from it, what you'll do different in the future. I think it'd be a really useful interview for people that are that have written something and need to rewrite it or are thinking about rewriting it. So welcome.
Thank you. I think I can give you a very quick answer to all these questions, and this will be the shortest podcast ever. So why did I do it? Because I'm dumb and a masochist. What will I do next? I will never do it again. No, I'm kidding. I actually learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to this. And thanks for all the compliments.
So before I got into writing fiction, I did science journalism. And one of the things I would often ask a scientist, explain your work as if I'm someone you met at a party and I don't know anything about what you do. So I'm going to ask you to explain LitRPG. Like you just met me at a party and you have no idea what I know about this whole subgenre of fantasy.
Okay.
Renee, I don't think you know much about it, do you?
I mean, I have a history of playing role-playing games,
Ooh.
You know, like the nerd I am, but I'm not really sure what LitRPG. So like my shirt says, too long, don't read Rainbow. Like...
Explain it to Renee and she'll ask you questions, but we'll try to keep it pretty short. But
okay.
Assuming she doesn't know anything about this.
Okay. Well, this triggers a lot of trauma because I've done that at parties and it never ends well. But the issue here is that it's such a new genre and it's so meta in some ways that it's really hard to explain. I'll try my best. So a LitRPG is a subset of progression fantasy. And progression fantasy is fantasy or science fiction or speculative literature, as we would have called it in my master's degree, that concerns itself more with the power gains as a tool to keep the reader engaged rather than character development. And a LitRPG in specific is a story in which the characters, either the main character or several characters, are aware that they have stats, just like in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So it's a normal book, it's a normal novel, and these characters know that they have stats. So they have strength, agility, or items, or they give certain boons or whatever, and they know these things. And part of the fun for many people is to read to find out how these people are then going to game the system, how they're going to be super powerful, or how they're going to be using all these, cool skills and items in conjunction in order to beat some foe. I think this is actually the best description I've ever had. I should put this as an MP3 and just take it with me all the time.
So can I ask a follow-up question real quick?
Please don't. Yes, of course, please.
No, God, no. So say I'm playing I don't know if you remember this. You seem a little young. Vampire and the Masquerade, right?
Yes.
You remember that one?
Yes.
From the 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
So say I'm playing that game, right? There's two protagonists.
Mhm.
There's the player, Renee,
Mhm.
but then there's my character,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Who is the character who are the characters in your book? Are they the actual character trying to level up, or are they the person trying to play a character leveling up?
Well, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it. There's both is the coaching answer. It depends. So there is a subset of LitRPG called Game Lit. And in that, there are certain people who play a video game. And of course, they are aware that their character has stats and, that they are in a game. But there's also other LitRPG that is not in a game, that is in the real world. Large subset of that is called System Apocalypse. I'm going to go into that later. And those characters are not in the game. They are standard novel protagonists, and they just have a system. Best example just released today was He Who Fights with Monsters number 11. And in it, the protagonist, Jason Asano, the first thing he does when he awakens is that in a fantasy world is that he has got a quest. And he's like, oh, this is weird. Am I in a game? No, I'm not.
Isn't the quest to find his pants?
No, it's to kill a bunny and he gets a shirt.
Okay.
I think the shirt says something like, I got teleported into a new world and all I got was vast cosmic power or something. So yeah, the humor really makes it.
So this brings up another aspect of the LitRPG genre, which is that this is book 11, and these are long books.
Yes.
And the people in this space write a lot. Do you remember that one romance writer I interviewed that was writing a book a month? This is like that, except no romance.
Yeah.
But they write these incredibly long series. And part of the reason that they can do this, or part of what is the setup, is that they publish them serially. They don't write the whole book and go back and edit. They are releasing chapters. Like, how often do people release chapters in this genre?
Once a day. Some people just do it once a day. I have a friend who literally writes, or if he's having like a really good day, kids out of the house, and he's struck by inspiration, he writes 15,000 words a day. My fellow, I'm an independent agent signed with an agency, and the guy who leads that agency, he represents a person called Pirate Abba, and Pirate Abba is notorious for doing nothing but writing, and sometimes they get close to like 22,000 words a day. So they used to actually finish about 200,000 words in a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is any of that edited later?
Pirate Abba's books are, as far as I know, but also they all developed the skill where they edit just to the point where it's good enough. They write very, very clean first drafts. Also, sometimes it helps, like this again being the exception. Pirate Abba is just, I don't know, on some other level. But many of these plots aren't all that complicated. The characters don't have much development. Like they, either by some cosmic intervention or by personality, don't really care about connections all that much. And all that really matters is, having fun and leveling up and being very, very strong. And maybe, having the odd ragey episodes and all that kind of stuff. It makes it easier to write because you don't have to like layer 15 different emotions and everything.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I was curious. So I mentioned a live action role-playing game. I don't know if those are played anymore. There's also the one everyone knows, which is Dungeons and Dragons. When you say RPG, are we talking about a tabletop or are we talking about a video game?
We're talking about rocket propelled grenades. No, we're talking about
right.
I'm kidding.
No, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, we're having a blast. No.
I warned you about the puns.
She did. To be honest, she did warn me.
Yeah. By explosive humor. I'm
delighted. I'm just saying I'm delighted. I think it's
Thank you.
So are we talking about video games? Are we talking about, tabletop role-playing games like dice and stuff? Like,
the answer is yes.
Nice.
So it can be both. I mean, if you're looking at it, like Vampire the Masquerade, for example, right? It is both a tabletop role-playing game and also a video game, right? I think what happened first was live action role playing. They had to have some sort of interaction to govern their improv theater. And then someone sat down and they played miniature war games. And these miniature war games had like lots of rules at some point. And then they spun that off into what if we only have one character each? And we, go into dungeons and kill monsters. And that's how Dungeons and Dragons happens. Then at some point they took that and put that into a video game. Like Rogue, for example, is one of the first games of this design. And then Might and Magic and lots of other games. Basically, I wasn't joking when I said like the answer is yes. So it's all of them combined.
And one other thing about these books is that while the actual character progression might be kind of sparse, and while the actual depth of the character they make might be sparse, one thing that these writers often do is they spend a lot of time thinking about what kind of system they're going to use to progress their character, to the point that they're writing something that could feel like it could be a video game because of the way they balance their stats, their upgrades, their feats, there's a whole bunch of thought that goes into creating a system to progress their character, and they're all a little bit different, and some are incredibly wacky and some are incredibly generic. That's one of the ways you can make your book stand out. Like somebody would in classical fantasy or science fiction, like, oh my God, it's world building. And in this one, it's like, oh my God, his system.
Which is world building, right? It is world building.
Yeah, the Rifts world is very different from the D&D world.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when you're in your book, Torchbearer, which system is it, or is it D&D like, or is it video game, or what's the genre?
I don't quite know what inspired it. I think I'm just gonna shout out my buddy Ravensdagger, because he wrote a story called Stray Cat Strut, where the system is literally alien plant monsters are invading the Earth. And there's other aliens that give you, basically a gigantic shop that you can buy stuff with if you're one of the few selected. And you can buy everything. You can buy like guns, you can buy ammunition, you can buy grenades, armor, mechs, a new house. You can buy everything.
Weed killers.
Anything. I don't know, like soda or like instant meals. Like you can do anything. But you have to kill monsters for it.
Childcare.
You said childcare?
Childcare. It's a big expense.
I think that actually that's the one thing that Kat never buys. because she has a partner and taking care of like this bunch of orphans, and it's one of the big things about it.
Definitely needs childcare.
There is an episode where there is school is in session and explanations about physics are being made with rocket launchers. So that's fun, and that's kind of also like the whimsical part of the LitRPG genre in general. People just they're looking at what's possible. And then they're always erring on the side of cool. Like, rule of cool is so important. And for Torchbearer, I think I was inspired by that a little bit. At least, like, I read it while I was writing it. So in my book, there is, it's very hard to explain because I did a lot of like backstories and all that kind of stuff. But there's basically a magical power that my main character Samantha used to have. And now, for some reason or another, after a great catastrophe, that is now commonly available to everyone. It's kind of like mostly machines, and it kind of like coalesces around the world, and it makes machines go mad because it's all in a fantasy world, right? So wherever this stuff rains down or coalesces, like dew, machines appear, and then if you leave them out to lie around in this stuff for too long, they become sentient. So you have like killer toasters trying to kill you because like everything is always Wi-Fi enabled, and they're all connecting to each other. And there's the real world where these robots are scuttling around, and there's the digital world where they are fighting these kind of like hacker battles with avatars.
So like the Matrix, but with appliances?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it is the Matrix, but it's magic punk Matrix, if that makes sense.
So let's shift to how you wrote the story, because I know it's a very complicated story where we could probably spend the entire podcast trying to hash out exactly what is going on in the story. But you, the writer, were inspired and you started writing this story. You were just releasing chapter by chapter and you were writing. Is that how it went?
Yeah, exactly. So how did I write it? Badly? No, I always like to joke about how quote unquote bad Torchbearer is, when in fact I don't think it's actually that bad. Need to be careful about that.
I would say that if you actually compared it against the vast number of stories that are on Royal Road where people paste it, I'm guessing you probably end up at least in the middle, if not in the upper fourth.
Oh yeah, not totally. I think I'm in top 10%. Like even the new launch at 600 followers is like in the top 10%. Sometimes it gets hard. Sorry, small segue, because like I talk to all these like really big authors all the time, you know, who are like making millions of their sales, and I'm sitting here going like, I've made like $30 off of Patreon or something. It's very tough not to compare yourself with these people if you're interviewing them all the time, especially if I consider some of them my friends and you're hanging out with them a lot. But it doesn't really help to compare yourself with others. One big thing is that I learned how to not do that. But the question you were asking was not about where I was in the stats, but it was something else.
So you're releasing it, and at a certain point, you have a huge amount written. When you were writing it, did you feel like it was going really, really well? Or like how your emotional journey?
Oh, the emotional journey was a lot. Yeah, I need to like back up a little bit, because I wrote a book basically 3 times. So the first time I wrote it, I met this wonderful woman who was an artist in London, in New York, and she really inspired me to write again. I used to do pottery, I used to do all kinds of other stuff, and then I just sat down and started writing again. After a while, I said to myself, like, hey, I should have some accountability. So I'm going to start posting on Royal Road. Whenever I write something, I'm not going to edit it. I'm actually going to take it and post it on Royal Road as it is. Because, I don't know, I might get 5 followers. That could be cool if they like interact with me and writing a story together with them. It could be fun. That was the basic idea behind it. And then I looked for some people to hold myself accountable, and I started the Discord server LitRPG, which is a small circle of friends that I have, and I love to pieces. That was really great. But then, as I was writing it, I kind of didn't read the old chapters, just kind of like wrote whatever came to mind, and like I had a broad idea of where I wanted to go, and just kept writing. And at the end of it, I looked at the book. I think it was like 98,000 words or something, or like maybe a little bit more. I think it was like 110. And I looked at it and I was like, man, that's really not good. Like I had a lot of rage spirals, because at the time I was engaged in the company and things weren't going so well. There was a lot of miscommunication about my role and role expectations. I'm not a very angry person usually, but that really like ground my gears, because I felt as though my work wasn't valuable, and there's nothing that gets me as annoyed as that.
And you're German, so an annoyed German sounds a lot angrier.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, like they were also German, so that didn't make it easier. It was kind of like a feedback loop. No, but I had these rage spirals in this book, right? Where always the main character would be super angry, and they would make a mistake, and then they would scold themselves about it, and then they would get angry again, just to keep past like the depression. And it was like really, really bad. I think I kind of wasn't there myself at that point, but I was going to be if I had stayed in that company for any longer.
So basically, it was art imitating your life?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, a little bit. I don't think there's any art that you can make that has anything to say that's not inspired by your life in some way, shape, or form. So I wrote that, I published it, and then I went on vacation, and I was like, you know what? I should write this again. So I went through the entire thing, and what I did was I just did line edits. I don't recommend this to anyone. So if you're going to edit your book, do it right. So I went through it, did all the line edits, and it got a lot better. I chunked out a bunch of stuff. There was a lot of repetition and like some plot holes, but whatever. And I re-released that. And that was actually pretty okay. So I hit Rising Stars with it, which is like the top 50 stories on Royal Road for a certain amount of time. I hit number 7 as on the highest rank. And left Rising Stars with about 1,050 followers or something. I didn't look at the stats at the time, because I felt that it would just distract me. I'm not doing this for the numbers. I'm doing this for me. So I wrote that. And then at the end, I was like, damn, I'm still getting the same feedback on it. So I should really write this again. I really want to, because I think I've nailed it down now.
What kind of feedback were you getting?
The rate spirals, again.
This is your personal feedback or feedback from other people?
Feedback from other people. My own feedback was still like, hey, this has gotten a lot better already, and I was very proud of it, and I am still very proud of it. Then from other people, I got like, hey, I don't really get it. It's too complicated, and it's really weird.
It's interesting because the things that you really were frustrated with were things that maybe the audience didn't see, and the things the audience didn't see were things that you. So kind of together, you're getting two very important pushes to what needs to be changed.
Exactly. I mean, like, I don't know who said it. I think it might be Neil Gaiman, but he said that like a person who tells you that they don't like your book is always right, but if they tell you what to do better, they're always wrong, or something like that. So the general gist is that if one person tells you, hey, this book is bad, you go, okay, whatever. If two people tell you, they might have a point, but they can't tell you what they want because they're not authors and they're not in your head. And also they're not dev editors, right? So some people might say like, this book is too complicated. But what they mean is not it's too complicated or too complex, because my God, there are some complex books out there. Like people like read through the Iron Tangle and Dungeon Crawler Carl, and they're like, yeah, cool. I love that book. It's great. It's not the complexity that was the issue. The issue was that, at least in my opinion, that the main character wasn't tangible. The main character wasn't really like she was passive. She was being railroaded and all kind of stuff. So I looked at it and it's like, yeah, the first half of the story really doesn't work. So I took the entire first half, chunked it out, and started writing it entirely from scratch with all the ideas that I had. I changed a lot of stuff, altered a lot of events and so on and so forth, and then I tied them together in the middle, and then I went over that again to smooth it out. It was really fun. Actually, cool little process. I wouldn't recommend it on a book that's like that long, because at this point the book was already like 170,000 words, and now at the end of it, it's 243,000. And keeping all that in your head is not a good idea.
So you said you took the first part of the book and you rewrote it. Did it just naturally segue into the second half that you didn't rewrite?
Yes, I made sure that I came out at the same part, and I could kind of tie them into each other. There's a big twist. Now it's in the middle. It used to be way earlier. And I was like, hey, this hits really well here. And people were like, yeah, this hits really well here now. So yeah, now that I've looked at it again, I'm looking at it and going like, oh, this is what I did wrong here. We were talking about this earlier, Kim, over chat. So the basic problem that I still have with the book is that I didn't really realize the main character's main motivation. I just wrote it, and she did stuff, and she was kind of involved, but in the end, she never really drove any action. Like there were never any decisions to be made for her. And so she could never show people who she really is. And that's a problem I'm looking to see if I can maybe hot fix this by basically writing 20,000 words as a kind of like silly little prequel that I'll just jam in there at the beginning. Then I'll just let it rest, because at this point I can only make it worse.
So we've been covering this book called the Writer's Journey, the Hero's Journey.
It's a book called the Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler, but essentially he just like steals from Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces and Jung's archetypes, and just says, "Oh, look at these archetypes! Oh, you have it! Hey, you have the exact book we're reading right now."
Yep.
So that's what we're reading right now for the podcast. I'm just kind of curious, did you use the hero's journey as a kind of like plot template for your story? Because I've noticed a lot of video games tend to do that. Dungeons and Dragons does that because it's kind of based on Tolkien, right? And Tolkien, even though his book came out before Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces, he clearly was writing the mythology. And so we're all kind of borrowing this mythological plot. So I'm kind of wondering, are you using the writer's journey or the hero's journey to plot your quest for your book?
Short answer, no. A long answer, I can explain to you why.
Cool.
Because I got that in college and I read through it and I found it needlessly prescriptive because I'm a free spirit. The gist of it is that I think the writers, like Save the Cat, Writer's Journey, all these books are amazing if you want to find out how to fix your story, like as you suggested, if your character actually follows that kind of issue. So what I have been using is, I think it's related to it. In the third rewrite, so in the latest one, I have used a book called Take Off Your Pants by Libby something something. Like, she's really, really good. She says, like, even if you're a pantser, you got to have some sort of structure. Otherwise, you just like write yourself to death. I've tried doing that, and it provided me a better structure, but it still didn't solve the problem for me, right? Because now I had like a structure, and my character like walked through it and did all the things, but she still wasn't interesting. Because you can adhere to the hero's journey 100%, like 100%, and you can write it all down, and you will still not have a good book.
Yeah.
Because the main character won't care, right? The main character's like, cool, I have to go to the mentor now. Why? I don't know. You have to do all these steps, and then like he returns with the elixir, and then everything is great. But in the end, they're like, yeah, so why did I fucking do this all the time? Sorry, pardon my French. I'm European. So why did I freaking do this? Nothing changed for me. I didn't make any decisions. I just went and did it. The way I write and the way that I love to write is I have another like smaller project called The Band, and it's about a college story in hell with people who play a metal band, and there's dungeons, and it's just brainless, cool fun. There, I wrote character first. Instead of thinking, hey, what cool events could there be? What do I think would be awesome? What would look great? I thought, hey, what kind of people do I want to hang out with? And I came up with this ridiculously cool and so sexy it hurts kind of vampire / cat boy who's really sick and tired of being reduced to his looks, and also like this werewolf which is like super adorable, and she has ADHD, and she loves math, and she loves like poems, and also punching people in the face because she's a werewolf. What do you do? Two of them band together and they have like a dungeon startup. That is way easier to write because as I told you about, these characters come to life already. But with Sam, I can't give you the same spiel. I can't tell you what makes her cool because I haven't written that yet, even 243,000 words in. And I have gone through the 12 arcs. I've looked at it. It's like, well, what am I doing wrong here? And the point was that during the entire time, Sam didn't make any meaningful decisions. And also, the reader doesn't care about her because, yes, she has tragedy in her life. She's also capable, right? So she's capable, so you would think people are invested in it. And yet, she never makes any decisions. She just kind of was like, yeah, cool, we'll do it. I have until 10 o'clock, and then I have to clock out. And she's just there for a job. That's what it reads like. And people don't care about it because there's no stake in it. It's not personal. I think that the hero with 1,000 faces, the monomyth, or Vogler's book, they're all great, but you have to couple them with a really good book on characters. A person who I respect greatly, his name is David Corbett, and he's written a book called The Art of Character. It's very artsy. He kind of loses himself in prose a little bit, and you have to like get to the middle until it clicks. But he really knows what he's talking about. Like, he's really, really, really good. He used to be PI for like 10 years, so he knows people like really, really good.
Interesting.
Yeah. Fun little side story. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, go for it.
So he's like this like really, really tall dude. His profile picture while he was giving his class on LitReactor, he had like a bald head and like stared into the camera like a PI, right? And nowadays he has like a bushy beard, like looks like a bit like Santa, so totally different. Back then, I had this picture with this man. In my head, he sounded like this hard-boiled detective. And so I wrote this fight scene, and he was like, I can appreciate how close to detail this fight scene is. Just one point. There are no bones in the nose, only cartilage. And I was like, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Run away.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting thing with your comment is that it sounds like there were actually two particular issues with Sam. The first was that she didn't have any motivation. Like, she didn't have a personality that wants and desires and pain and reasons for doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the second part was that she didn't have any agency. She wasn't the one making the decisions. She wasn't the one advancing. She wasn't the one optimizing her stat sheet. It wasn't her thing. And what I find interesting is that in the lit RPG space, it's the second that a lot of people really go for, because there are a lot of characters that are very, where the reader gets to put a lot of themselves into the character and not worry about who the character is.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to balance both of these elements. So one thing that your readers really want, for sure, and the one thing that you as a writer really need.
So this is going to be like a bit of an expansive thing, and I really hope I can keep it concise. I think it's both, and one begets the other. So because Sam doesn't want anything, she doesn't have to make any decisions. The plot has to take over. If she doesn't want anything, the plot has to drive her forward, has to pull her by the skin of her teeth, basically. And that's what gets annoying after a while. It gets tiresome. Yeah, of course she's going to react, and she's going to like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to be here. Because she doesn't, right? She has no reason to fight. She has no reason to push on. And so the plot has to drag her forward. And that means that if she doesn't have any reason, she also doesn't make any choices. Now, if you're looking at something like He Who Fights with Monsters, which is like a really huge story, the core plot is literally in the title. It's the Nietzsche quote. The question about Asano is, this is like a guy up until like yesterday, he sold stationery. If he gets like vast cosmic powers and he doesn't like authority, what will he do with it? Like, what does he want? And for him, it's quite easy. At the end of the very first arc, he decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to be using my powers for good. And he gets like really, really weird powers. Like, I don't want to spoil much, but he gets like really dark powers, like, you know, like blood and darkness and like justice or vengeance or sin. I think it's sin, evil powers. And he utters stuff like, I'm not Heath Miller, so I can't do the voice really well, but it's like, mine is a judgment and the judgment is death or something, like really edgy stuff. And then on the next second, he's eating a sandwich and hanging out with his friends, having Barbie, right? It's great. But the issue that many people have with Jason is that he has too much character. Yes, I think maybe. But having too much character is actually not the problem. The problem is that like his character doesn't change for a long time, and that's an issue with like the 11 books, right? So he has been struggling with this problem of like, hey, now that I have all this power and I am using it for good, I'm still under the thumb of some people and being pushed around, and I really don't want that. So he's always pushing back, even though if what they require him to do would be right. And so that also gets him to a standstill sometimes. Like, that's the entire point of the book, a bit of a pinball between all these like cosmic forces. And he doesn't want that anymore. There you go. He has a want. He doesn't want to be this player. He just wants to have like cool, fun adventures with his friends. But cosmic forces have decided that he is now like this guy. He's basically Frodo, but worse off and with a cooler power set. And in Dungeon Crawler Carl has an impossible goal. He needs to go to the deepest part of the dungeon and defeat the dungeon in order to save Earth. The lowest level is like 18, but he knows that no one's ever gotten past 13. Like, no one ever. The history of the millennium of this game has been active. No one's ever gotten past level 13. And yet, he wants to do it, and he has willpower beyond anything. So his entire tagline is, you will not break me. I will keep doing this and you will not break me. But last sentence on this, I promise. The way Matt Dinniman works this in, and the way he makes the book still very compelling, is that he takes all the character development and puts it into Carl's cat, Donut. And Donut is like, at the very beginning, she's almost like a child. You're giggling now, just waiting to hear about the donut holes. She's like a child at the beginning. She has like this amazing character where she speaks like Jeff Hayes, the guy who voices her, always has her speak in like this received pronunciation British Queen's English, because her full name is Queen Anne the Chonk something the third or something, like a real long pedigree. And she just talks like, she has a tiara. And like, no, Carl, we can't do this. It is way too costly.
She's a show cat.
She's a show cat, yes. She gets a pet raptor, just like 10 times her size, but she likes it. And she always externalizes all her fear. She was like, Mongo can't stand for it. Mongo won't go in there. But obviously she's talking about herself.
Right.
We want to know if that cat gets over herself. We root for her. And there's one moment where she sings and every single one cries. Every single person I've read the book cries. So, yeah.
This makes me wonder, in LitRPG, is there this kind of silliness? I don't want to call it silliness because it's a rich silliness. It's really cute, fun. Is that part of the genre? Like in Kim's book, yours would be considered a LitRPG, sort of?
Sorta.
Okay. There's some cute stuff in it. I mean, there's this big dog.
Yes.
that blinks and goes from one place to the other, and they get kind of cutesy. Again, that seems to belittle it, the words I'm using, but is there that kind of like fun, delight, throughout these books? Is that like one of the features of the genre?
Well,
I think the more successful ones have it.
Yeah, like Seth Ring, another friend or compadre of mine, even made a video about it. He called it like, why you have to have a funny animal companion in your book. I don't prescribe to something like this, even though I do have a funny animal companion in my book, but it kind of was necessary. It's a cat. But the point is that, yes, fun and cutesy, definitely. Yeah. But there are also books that don't have these funny moments. They're way darker. And there are moments of fun and enjoyment, yes, but they're not funny per se. The best books juggle it. Here Fights of Monsters and Dungeon Crawler Carl are both like, they're amazingly hilarious and at the same time like super tragic. I always joke that Dungeon Crawler Carl is an exploration of the sadistic reality of the panopticon of media, but also there's funny cats, right? So that's the plot of it. The dungeon AI, who's like the dungeon master and who gives out all the bonuses and stuff, like it has a thing for feet for some reason. And there's like Utsi Jesus and Travis Baldry, who's like an amazing narrator. I have no idea how they got him to do this. He voices a seal, like a animal seal that is obsessed with masturbating over crabs. Like that sort of stuff is in there. So you're asking about the comic stuff. The long answer of it was like that, and the short answer is like it's good to balance it.
To kind of bring it back to your stuff. Now you've written your Torchbearer rewrite. You've got this other side story you've been working on. All this experience, how are you going to, do you have another book in your mind that you want to write that's different than all these? Or are you going to stick with what you've got right now?
So Band didn't have its Royal Road run yet. So I'm going to try that after a while, which is always why I tell people to not look it up because it's not ready. So the current plan is I'm going to finish Torchbearer beta. Right now, I've rebranded the first book and it's called Genesis of the Sacred Machine. The second book will be Ascent of the Sacred Machine. The third one will be called Apex of the Sacred Machine. And I will finish that. I have ideas about how to finish it. I also have Sam's motivation figured out, kind of. I'm going to spoil it at the end. And then I'm going to write Band, because Band is just fun to write. It's silly, it writes itself, and I can literally write like 6,000 words of it a day. Just sit down, write it down, push it out. It's done. It's great. After that, I have a couple that I want to write. They're still LitRPG, but they're more on market. Because as much fun as it is to write for myself and have a really cool, like, hey, this is fun. I think at some point I owe it to myself to find out if I can write to market if I want to. Not, like weigh myself down with like 10-kilogram weights where I'm writing about like postmodernism and hyperreality, but, write like a simple, fun, numbers go up story. And A, if that's even fun for me, and B, if I can actually land that so that I, I'm not just talking out of my ass.
And do you have like a set of like rules in your mind or a mindset that if I start a new book or if I go to the Band, are there things that you are definitely going to do or not going to do that you've learned from the writing and the rewriting and the rewriting?
Yeah, definitely. I will definitely figure out what the character's real goal is first. And then I'm going to set every scene as opposed to that goal. So not just what they need to learn, but also what they really want. Like they need to burn for something.
Mm-hmm. I like that phrase.
Yeah. For example, in Torchbearer at the start, I'm going to make it way clear that Sam is a person who really just wants to, she thinks what she wants is find people who are good to work with. And she wants to like do something cool with her friends and like work together with her friends. But what she really wants is companionship, right? Because she doesn't have that in her like menial managerial life. And then she gets that in the next world, she gets that and she loses it all again. And then the book starts. It's all a bit harsh. But going back to this core thing of like, hey, I really want connection here. Rephrasing that core idea every single time she really fails. So for example, at first she says, hey, I really want to work with cool people. Then in the second part where she's like, okay, now I'm in a fantasy land and building a corporation is really impossible. So what we'll do instead, I think I'm going to take all these people here who are like kind of outcasts like me, and we're going to do something really cool. And we're going to be basically Fantasyland X-Men, standing up for the rights of the oppressed, people with magic like us, that kind of stuff.
Nice.
And she's really into that, like really into that. And then they all die.
Spoiler!
Well, that's how the book starts.
That's how the book starts?
That's how the book starts, yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great. I'm in. I'm hooked. I want to read this now.
See, there you go. Like I just have to write that still. It's not in there yet.
Oh, I see.
See. Like it's way easier like this, right? Because I thought I could be doing something really cool. I could be like incrementally reveal the story as the main story progresses, and have like the old story revealed in flashbacks that like are parallels to the scene that she's experiencing right now, and it was complicated. It was really complicated.
I see. So you made the choice.
I'm not good enough for this. Not yet. Like, I would be good enough for it right now if I could put my mind to it and lots of work into it. Like, lots of work. And it wouldn't be easy. So I would have to like write it, and then I would have to like go back and do it again, and then basically write the first story, then write the second story, and then put them all together, and like, hard. But for band, doing the same thing. Victor, what he really wants is he wants to show his parents they're like real big stars. His dad is like a show cat, a werecat, and his mother is a high-level dungeon boss. She's a raid boss in a dungeon. He really wants to show them that like he too is capable, and that they give him more attention because they're always kind of absent, right? So he wants to show them, hey, I'm cool too. What he really wants is like more attention from his parents. But what he needs to learn is that his parents don't really matter all that much. So that's all that stuff. Waverly, on the other hand, she wants to get away from her parents. They always kind of like mirrors of each other. Like I have no idea how that works, but it always kind of does. And I love it to pieces because basically it's a story about a cat and a dog getting along. It's so cool.
I hadn't thought of that.
That's what I want to do.
That's great.
I would definitely. First of all, figure out the main character's motivation. Have a world. That's fine. Have a world. Have a cool moments of like, wow, this part could be cool. Technological necromancy. Oh my god, this is great. Or there's people in hell and they will have the power of metal and friendship, and they will do cool things together. Awesome. But then you need to find out what's the driving heart of the story, and that's always the characters. So whatever you do, you got to have both. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
That's awesome.
Do you have any questions, Renee?
No, I'm just delighted though. I want to read this story. I can't wait. I was set up, and then like I got the candy now. Like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'll find all the rejects, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard that story before. They die. Oh, but that's chapter 1. This is so funny. But it has this kind of dark humor in it too. It's both kind of like, wow, this is a weird world. Mm-hmm. But also it works. Like you can create this bizarre, odd world. Mm-hmm. So not bizarre, but bizarre in the sense of how so far distant it is from the world we live in, and make it plausible and believable, which is like quite the feat.
Yeah.
But then to also like turn narrative plots on their heads and do crazy shit and also make that work. Like that is expertise. Like, I know you think, oh, that other storytelling stuff is hard. The other stuff you're doing is really hard. And it sounds like you're pretty successful at it.
The world is the easy part. I think the world is the easy part because the world is just like, it's just logical. I have a friend or a person I would like be delighted to call a friend. I guess his name is John Beers, and he loves this kind of stuff. And his first idea is like, okay, I'm making a magic system or a game system, and you're in our case. And the first question he asks is, okay, so what does that do with the sewers in cities? Like, that's the first thing he figures out, because that's what you want to have. If you're doing these world building things, you want to figure out what does that do to people if you have these systems in place. In Band, for example, monsters only gain experience from triggers, and they only get it once. They're like normal experiences, like if you're a werewolf, you get experience points for howling at the moon for the first time, or for fighting in a pack, or asserting your dominance, or whatever. But these run out after a while, right? So you no longer really grow. Like at level 25, maybe level 50-ish, you no longer advance. And this is my analogy for midlife crisis, right? Life is just stale, and you're just staying there.
It's actually an interesting take, because often in these series is that as you gain levels, it becomes easier to gain more levels because you have more experience. But in a way, it does reflect life. Like everything you do as a teenager is new and different and changes you. And then suddenly you're 30 years old or 40 years old. Like, wait a second,
like,
what do I do now?
That's kind of fun. And obviously, like, there's ways in which you can get like more experience, which is basically getting a second class. So yeah, you get your werewolf class as a werewolf, cool, but you can also be a dungeon boss, and that has like way more experience triggers than, you know, just being a dungeon minion. So that's how you kind of like get more experience. And then there's like math involved that I really shouldn't have done, but that kind of stuff.
Do they know that howling at the moon gives them XP, or do they just like do it and then suddenly it's like, oh, I gained XP. I wonder what other werewolfy things I can do that will gain.
So yes and no. So like the easy ones just happen, right? But then there are like well-guarded secrets. Each family has their own secrets about like, hey, like this is a cool trick that will net you like a lot of XP if you can pull that off, right?
Okay.
So they don't share that all that much because, you know, it's still hell. They have a long-standing history of like feuds and all that kind of stuff, even though hell's like way different today.
Is there like a pantheon or some kind of like god or goddess, kind of like a D&D, that kind of like pull the strings and actually deliver XP to people? Is that like a feature, or is it just happens in the world and it's just
I don't know yet. Like I have this idea that maybe there is definitely a connection between the system and the Church of Satan. I know that, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
So I have some ideas. Maybe it will be like a big plot point in the future. So what I did for Torchbearer is I discovery wrote a system, and it worked perfectly. So I was like, hey, what does she need now? Oh, this is what she needs. She gets that. I need to show the reader how much health she has left. So now basically there's like a readout that shows her data integrity. And if her data integrity goes to 0, she gets corrupted and she dies. I need a way to not have her run like super fast all the time. So now her stamina is basically tied to her core temperature. So if her CPU gets too hot, she, you know, feels hot and she cannot run anymore, and she gets like slower and everything hurts. That kind of stuff.
Well, a nice thing about writing like 6,000 words a day is that, you know, you can work this stuff out and still be producing a book.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, people that, you know, agonize over the world building and never get anything written.
Yeah.
So much of this is so fascinating about like not just the writing of it, but the thinking about it and the storytelling of it. Like it's just like, I feel like I'm in Candyland and I'm just like, ooh, tasty. Oh my God, look at all this.
I suspect I'm gonna have to give you some recommendations after this.
This is exactly what I recommend. And like I think this is a good takeaway for you guys. Like I recommend this to everyone. Like just go on Railroad and write a trash story. Like my buddies and I, we have like this concept of the trash story. I haven't done this yet, but you make a new account, like just pick any username, pick any avatar, and you just write trash. And then you still will get followers, at least like 5 or 6. And you're gonna write a trash story. And maybe you'll get like even really good at it because you really love it. You just write what you love the entire time. You don't care about quality or editing. Like I have a bunch of friends who edit and edit and edit. I mean, Luke was talking, right? But they never even push stuff out on Royal Road because they're so afraid of failure. They're so afraid of not living up to their own expectations, maybe, or other people's expectations. Or I even have a friend who's afraid of success because it's like, I can't put this out. If this gets too hot, I don't know what I will do. I'm like, dude, this is really hot and you should really publish this. Like, no, I can't. Like, I can't. But yeah, there we are.
The other great thing about Royal Road is that people want to read.
Yeah, they devour it.
Like for all, like my 13-year-old, getting him to sit down and read a book and read a chapter and he's done. But these people just keep reading and reading and reading. So it's an excellent medium just to get someone that wants to read your stuff.
And yeah, like the entire part of it is, if you're having fun writing it, people will have fun reading it. As long as your grammar is like standard and you're not, writing, I don't know, like something horrific, everything is going to be fine. Like you're going to get like 200 followers, like I did on the first Torchbearer. I was really not that good. So what you want to do on Royal Road is you want to increase dopamine levels to maximum. So you want to give people lots of dopamine. You want to hook them. You want to really just keep them turning. So you remember like how there were like these pulp fictions, like these dime novels? Royal Road is exactly
like Dracula.
that. Like Dracula, or in Germany we have like this long-standing book series called Perry Roden. It ran since like 1958, and it's still going. And they're still releasing a booklet each week.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's not as massive as like some LitRPGs out there, but the idea of a serial fiction is still there. And in order to get that serial fiction going and running, you have to have the dopamine. People have to be like, oh, wow, this is cool. Oh, this is great. Oh my God, what cool next thing will come up with this? Or, oh, this is going to be so good because he just got this cool skill. Enemy won't even know what's going to hit him, right? That sort of stuff. You want to evoke that when you're writing a Royal Road story. But you can also just literally just write whatever you want. A friend of mine, really good friend, he wrote a story about a crab that gets hit with a character creation scroll, an idea which I stole, by the way. Thanks, host. And he just becomes a merchant. And the story is called Merchant Crab. The crab just sits in his pond and like sells and buys items and talks to people coming by and makes up a big shop. And yeah, and he really just wants to make cash and eat pie. Like that's all there is to it. Just write your goddamn story. Just write something. It's going to be fun. As long as you have fun, everything's fine.
That'd be a good sticker. Write your goddamn story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always finish up the interviews with, is there anything that you thought I would ask you that I did not ask you?
Wow, there's so many inappropriate things I could say right now.
The power of editing.
Yes. I don't want to say I don't know, because I know from experience how bad that is. Just give me a second to think about it. Oh, but I have one more thing I wanted to add, which I didn't say, but I wanted to say. And that is, I said I would recommend 2 books on character. And the first is The Art of Character by David Corbett. The second one is called The Secrets of Character by Matt Bird. And he also wrote a book called The Secrets of Story, which I also wholesomely recommend. The Secrets of Character is, interestingly, a book about characters. And he has this BCI idea, right? So you have to believe, care, and invest in your main character. And he basically gives you like an a la carte menu of like, here's some ways you can do that. And the book is great, just absolutely great. And he talks about the first 10 pages, right? Just in the first 10 pages, do some of these things and your book will be all right, because you will have all the time in the world, because people will be invested, and you can set up your like weird, like long ass story. Just cool, but you gotta have them hooked. And then the Secrets of Story is more about like the entire story. How do you end it? How do you get through the middle and all that kind of stuff? So that's something. Then something you would have asked me. Oh yeah. You could have asked me where can people find my podcast?
Nice.
That's excellent. Fantastic.
Nice.
Where can people find your podcast?
https://linktr.ee/critrpg. It's CRIT RPG. You can also find me on YouTube. You can find me on any other big platform, like maybe even the platform you're listening on right now. Finish the episode. Finish all the other episodes. And then maybe you can go and like check out LitRPG. I got like some really, really cool people on, and it's not just me babbling. It's some of these interviews are hilariously good, so you should check it out.
It's some really good babbling. So you also have your Patreon account as well.
Yes.
We'll link that, where if you just want to hear the whole thing. I've often done some really good cleaning work or other stuff where I just like let it go, and it's just a really nice conversation.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from your podcast.
Thank you. I have no idea how I'm doing it. I just talk to people.
We show up and we're in front of microphones and we start talking.
Put the microphone in front of Renee and we go to town.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, dude. This
really
is
good interview. I'll let you know when it gets up.
Cool.
And best of luck with all the writing and rewriting and the Royal Road stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Words to Write By is produced by Renee Nelson and Kim Smiga Addo. Our theme music is Roll Back the Carpet by Cool Cat Music. Have a great day.
Dun dun, plot thickens. Oh, boy. Oh, you're actually in Germany.